I don't have any time on my screen. Is it that time? I don't have any time. Okay.
Yeah, 7 o'clock.
I'll call to order the Apache Junction Planning and Zoning Commission meeting of June 26, 2018. It is now 7 p.m. And if everyone would join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please, Rudy.
Commissioner Schroeder.
Present.
Vice Chair Heck.
Present.
Commissioner McGraw.
Here.
Commissioner Kreidler.
Here.
Commissioner Frank.
Present.
Chairwoman Nesser.
Present.
Commissioner Howard.
Here.
7 present. We have a quorum, Madam Chair.
Okay, we'll move on to the consent agenda, which is both the consideration of approval of the agenda and consideration of approval of the regular meeting minutes of March 27, 2018. Can I have a motion?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I move that the Planning and Zoning Commission accept the agenda as presented. I also make a motion to reject the minutes from the March 27, 2018 regular meeting.
Okay, we have a motion and we have a second?
Second.
We have a sec, we have, can I have a second? We have a second. Roll call vote, please.
Vice Chair Heck.
Yes.
Commissioner McGraw.
Yes.
Commissioner Kreidler.
Yes.
Commissioner Frank.
Yes.
Chairwoman Nesser.
If we are going to
Point of order.
not approve the minutes, do we
Point of
need a
order.
reason?
Point of order.
Yes?
We're in the middle of a vote right now, no discussion until after the motion's passed.
I'm asking a question of the attorney because I can't vote until I have an answer. Do
We're
we
still
need
in-
a reason why?
We are still in the middle of a vote.
Well, then I can't vote. What do I do?
Abstain?
Because I don't have any written reason. I mean, do we need to know why we are doing this?
Well, there was time for discussion. The second was made,
Yes.
correct?
Yes?
Okay. And you called for a vote.
Yes?
I think you did call for a vote, correct?
Yes?
Okay, so there was no discussion on it.
There was no discussion on why.
Well, then you're supposed to do the vote without the discussion. Did you ask for discussion? I didn't hear that.
No, I didn't, because we've never done one, so I didn't even think about it.
Okay, then I think there should be, then a vote needs to take place. Because discussion could have taken place, but it didn't.
But then I'm going to abstain.
Well, I think, are you asking Rudy to do the roll call?
Yes, he's doing it.
How many people voted already? Was it 1?
4.
4, okay, wow. Then I would probably agree that you can't discuss it at this time.
Okay. Continue, Rudy, then.
Madam Chair, so you abstain?
Yes.
Okay. Commissioner Howard.
Yes.
Commissioner Schroeder.
Yes.
6 in favor, 1 abstention. The motion passes, Madam Chair.
Okay, we'll move on to the public hearing. We have one public hearing tonight, which is presentation, discussion, public hearing and consideration of case CUP-2-18.
Madam Chair? I'd just like to take the opportunity to explain my vote.
Okay,
Which vote?
I guess,
The vote as far as the denial of the minutes.
Well, I think that item is passed, because you already called about the new item. So I think that's over.
But I still have the opportunity to explain my vote.
Well, you already voted.
That's correct, but I have, once the vote,
but that, as Joel
once the
go-
motion passes, I have the opportunity to explain my vote.
Right, however, the chair called for the other item, so I think we're already on the other item.
So I'm being denied the opportunity to,
No, the rules say that once you've called on another item, you're on the next item. So I think the minutes item is already done.
Then, Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion that I have the opportunity to explain my vote.
It's not on the agenda. That's up to Joel.
No, it's not, it's up to you.
Well-
Can he make a motion can anyone make a motion?
I think, yes, someone can make a motion to reopen the item,
Okay,
even though it's already been voted on, but someone would have to make that motion, there'd have to be a second, and there'd have to be a vote on
Okay.
that motion.
And I made the motion to explain my vote.
okay, do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Can we have a roll call vote, Rudy?
Just 1 second, Madam Chair. Motion to explain vote. Second by Commissioner Frank. Okay, Vice Chair Heck,
Yes.
Commissioner McGraw,
Yes.
Commissioner Kreidler,
Yes.
Commissioner Frank,
Yes.
Chairwoman Nesser,
Yes.
Commissioner Howard,
Yes.
Commissioner Schroeder.
No.
No. 6 in favor, 1 against, so moved, Madam Chair.
Okay. If you'd like to explain, you or anyone else?
I would like to take a moment to point out the inaccuracies that I found in the minutes from Tuesday, March 27th, 2018. First off, as far as roll call present, the first inaccuracy was Chairperson Howard was noted instead of Commissioner Howard. Another item that I'm directly aware of was later on in the meeting where it said that I think the videos are all the same location, false information on the videos.
What page?
Page 12, I'm sorry. The section that there's a couple of things there that I had issue with. One, that I stated he added all the addresses are adjacent to the applicant's property, which is incorrect. What I stated was 4 of the named houses were adjacent to the property, the rest were not, which also brings me up to the fact that the letter in question that I was referring to, that were signed by 13 people, is also omitted from that area, as well as an omission of the mention that I actually stopped by all said locations and took mileage and actual listen to for things. That was also omitted. Another point on page 14, one, it said about the third of the way down, it said several commissioners agreed, but doesn't say what commissioners and what it was an agreement on. That's mentioned twice in there. Then, after calling for a 10-minute break, it states the commission discussed the staff recommendations of the staff report, but there is no mention in there that that session was called back into play. And then it also says after that discussion, or in that discussion, it doesn't mention anything that was discussed, nor who discussed it. And then it says that Chair Nesser called for a motion. So all of that right there stipulates for a lot of inaccuracies. Now, I'd like to point out that in Arizona Revised Statute 38-431.01, Section B4, it states, an accurate description of all legal actions proposed, discussed, or taken, and the names of members who proposed each motion. The minutes shall also include the names of the persons as given, making statements or presenting material to the public body, and a reference to the legal action about which they made statements or presented materials. That, in turn, leads us to Arizona Revised Statute 38-431.05, Section A. All legal action transacted by any public body during a meeting held in violation of any provision of this article, which would include the last one I mentioned, is null and void except as provided in subsection B, which I won't take the time to read, but I have it available, which also then leads us to having knowledge of that, all of us on the commission, leads us to Arizona Revised Statute 38-443, nonfeasance of a public officer. A public officer or person holding a position of public trust or employment who knowingly omits to perform any duty, the performance of which is required of him by law, is guilty of a Class 2 misdemeanor unless special provision has been made for punishment of such omission. And in this case, Class 2 misdemeanor would be punishable by a fine fixed by the court of not more than $750. That is my reason for denying the vote. All of the inaccuracies, and I will not be held in a position of nonfeasance.
Okay, good. Does anyone else, since the motion was to explain a vote, that did not apply to just one person, did it?
Correct.
Does anyone else wish to
Yes.
explain their vote? Yes.
Yes. At the time of the discussion, I made a statement that I felt that the staff recommendations should be followed, and we didn't need to make any changes to staff recommendations, and that's nowhere in the minutes.
Okay.
Madam Chair,
Peter?
there are a couple statements that I believe that I had made that I don't recall seeing in here. There's one where I am credited with saying that I live near the hitching post, which I don't. My biggest concern is I went to look at the video. I thought the easiest way for me to figure out what I said and what I didn't say was to review the video, which has not been available. And my concern is, why would that not be available? There's no way for me to confirm or refute what I believe I did or didn't say. So I believe it's just not, I don't feel comfortable to say, well, these minutes are okay, there's too many flaws from what I'm perceiving. And there's no way for me to be able to resolve that or reconcile that.
Okay. Anyone, Willie? No?
Madam
Robert?
Chair,
Yes.
we had a 5.5-hour meeting, and it's all condensed into 5 or 6 pages. And that's my concern, that there's some things missing here.
Okay. And I'm going to state that the reason I abstained and did not vote was because I actually wanted to hear all these reasons, because I wasn't sure exactly where this stood. But since I didn't ask for anyone to explain it, I abstained, but that's the only reason I did abstain, so. Do we need to do anything further with that?
Unless there's other comments, I think
Yeah.
you might
Can
want
I
to
ask a
move on.
question?
Yes.
So you want verbatim minutes? Is that what we're talking about here?
That is correct.
Verbatim?
I think that's a
And
requirement.
based on,
Well, I have to interrupt, I'm sorry. That's not on the agenda, so that's a different policy discussion. So I think that would have to be put on the agenda for next time.
well, point of order on that, because Arizona Revised Statute already states that it's supposed to be accurate in depiction. So there's not anything to take a motion on. Arizona Revised Statute already states that.
This is not on the agenda to have a policy decision on how your agenda will be formatted. So if you want to have that discussion, that should be a separate item.
Will that affect any change to these minutes? Do we need to do something, to make another motion to?
I think the body can make another motion to direct staff to do something with the minutes. So I don't want to tell you how to do it,
Okay,
so I don't want to overstep, but you could do another motion.
okay. I will leave that up for a motion, for someone to make a motion of how they would like to see the minutes redone.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
based on Arizona Revised Statute 38-431.05, that whole meeting should be null and void based on the fact that there was a violation of 38-431.01 subsection 4.
You're not talking about the redoing the minutes, you're
I'm
talking
not
about
talking about
redoing.
redoing the minutes, the whole entire, everything in those minutes is null and void based on the fact that it was improperly done.
But are you asking for the minutes to be redone, or to, as you
No,
stated?
I am not. As it states in the Arizona Revised Statute, the meeting is null and void. All legal action transacted by any public body during a meeting held in violation of any provision of this article, which is, like I stated, Arizona Revised Statute 38-431.01, subsection 4, that makes it null and void. The whole meeting is null and void.
Okay, so your motion is to find the meeting null and void.
I'm not even sure if I will make the motion to do that based on the Arizona revised statutes, but I don't even believe that that's even needed.
That's not on the agenda, Madam Chair.
What,
What's on the
okay,
agenda right now are the minutes,
that's what I thought, we're dealing with just
just the minutes.
the
So-
minutes.
To nullify based on Arizona revised statutes.
To nullify is not on the agenda.
Do you want them?
We're still dealing with the approval, or the denial of the minutes.
The only thing on the agenda is the minutes, the approval of the minutes. That motion's already been done, and now you have explained it. There really, unless you want to call for another motion to redo that
That's what I was
motion?
I did. I called for if anyone wanted to make a motion for the minutes to be redone. Did I not?
And I stated null and void per Arizona revised statute.
And that
But
is not
that's,
on the agenda. That's an opinion,
That's-
that's all that is.
as you're saying, that would have to come up as a separate item to deal with the meeting itself. This right now is just the minutes,
That's correct.
whether you want them redone.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
if I'm understanding you correctly, Commissioner Craigler, you're saying because the minutes were inaccurate, not just the minutes are null and void, the whole meeting is null and void.
That is correct.
And are you suggesting that we hold another meeting?
No, I'm not. I'm not suggesting that at all. I'm saying the whole thing, all the decision, everything is null and void because of the fact that
So what does
we are
that-
in violation of
that's supposed to
this
accomplish
section.
here?
wait a
Madam
minute,
Chair,
why would typing minutes incorrectly nullify an entire meeting?
I'm not the one who wrote the statute.
Madam Chair, we are off the agenda.
We're not here to discuss our meeting, our 5-hour meeting. We're dealing strictly with the minutes.
I'm pointing out to everyone that
Yes, you can, but this is not the
what
time
I'm
to do
pointing out
that.
to everyone is that the minutes were inaccurate. We have denied them, and that we are in violation of Arizona revised statute. And that's why I said I don't feel we need to make a motion. It's already clear in the ARS of what needs to be done.
Well, I'm not an attorney, so
So-
I don't know, I wouldn't know, and
I would draw the motion to do anything else because it's already been denied, and to move on.
so you don't want to do anything with them, just deny the minutes?
It's already been denied,
Okay, yes.
and it's on record as to what's going on as far as the, how that, or my reason for that.
Joel, can I have a question? Would the argument here be more of an open ballot argument if it was done before the vote? Discussing it before we did a vote, would that be a time and a place for this sort of discussion? Or is the problem is we've already voted on it and it's passed, now it's the next item on the agenda?
All that's on the agenda
Is this item?
is consent agenda. 18-302, consideration of approval of agenda.
Oh, I understand that, but I mean, what I'm saying is that if you're saying a time for discussion over your vote would be before the vote is cast, right?
Before it was
Well,
taken, started.
Before it was started,
I was
so,
about to say, it says consideration of approval of regular, this is the second one, approval of regular meeting minutes of March 27th. So the time to discuss that would have been before the motion. However, it wasn't done. So the motion was made, and then now there was another desire to discuss it. So Commissioner Kreidler made another motion to discuss, which is a little awkward, but can it be done? Yes, because you reopened the discussion. You're discussing it. However, the issue of whether it was an illegal meeting is not before the commission. What is before the commission is approval of the minutes.
And we've done that, and it was said, do not approve the minutes. That's over and done with,
And you
because it
have-
was voted on.
And there was no direction to staff to further change the
To further,
minutes.
because he made a motion but withdrew it
Correct.
to do anything further with the minutes. So at this point, unless someone else wants to make a motion, there's nothing to be done further with the minutes other than they are
Denied.
denied.
Correct.
Okay.
The next item.
Okay, we'll move on and proceed with presentation, discussion Public hearing and consideration of the case CUP-2-18, a request by Simon CRE Lodgepole 3 LLC.
Good evening, Madam Chair and Commissioners. I'm Danielle Jordan, the planning intern here at the City of Apache Junction. This is a conditional use permit, the case CUP-2-18 by Simon Cree Lodgepole, the third LLC, and it's represented tonight by Identity Sign Group. So here's an aerial map. The site is located at 185 West Apache Trail in suite number 1. The current zoning is B1 PD, which is the general commercial by plan development. The request is to allow one 350 square foot wall sign, one 7.2 square foot under canopy sign, and 2 8 square foot wall plaques for the tenant Ross Dress for Less. And here we have the general zoning map. So to the north, east, and west, there's just a large variety of general commercial zoned lots with a variety of retail places. There's an animal hospital, Subway, hair salon, things like that. Then to the south, there is the Rock Shadows Mobile Home Park zoned RVP. So a little background on the building specifically. The building was previously the Fry's food store, but after it moved locations, it split into 3 suites. So Ross is taking suite 1, then in the middle is currently unnamed, and on the other side is going to be Goodwill. And then the portion of the building that Ross will be occupying is 18,000 square feet, and then the property owners acquired this property in January. Then a little bit more background on the property itself. There are 2 ordinances associated with this property. Ordinance number 1021, it was adopted in January of 1998. And this ordinance rezoned the property from multifamily residential to general commercial. And that was basically to be able to develop it into a shopping center. Then a little bit later in June of 1998, there was ordinance number 1047, and that was an amendment to ordinance number 1021. And the major change to that was a revised conceptual site plan, but all the requirements from 1021 stayed the same. Then, of course, in 2014, the new zoning ordinance was adopted, changing the property's designation to the equivalent of B1 PD, which has the same name, general commercial by plan development. So I'm just going to go through the submitted site plans and elevations that were submitted by the applicant. So this is the general site plan. As you can see, the Ross on the one side, the unnamed tenant in the middle, which I think at one point it was proposed to be a Dollar Tree, and then the Goodwill, which I believe opened on Friday. And then this is the submitted elevation. The building frontage is 120 square feet, and then you can see the large wall sign. Then there'll be 2 smaller plaques on the side, and then the under canopy sign. Here is a close-up of that 8 square foot wall plaque. Just kind of the Ross logo. And then that 7.2 square foot under canopy elevation, so just a smaller version. Then as far as public input, so the sign was posted at the site, notices were sent out to the property owners 300 feet around the site, and it was advertised, but staff has not received any responses. So staff is recommending denial for the 351 square foot wall sign. However, staff is recommending in favor of 1 150 square foot main sign, 2 8 foot square wall plaques, and the 7.2 under canopy sign. So basically, we just want to shrink that big wall sign, the big sign, down to the 150 square foot sign, which is the max size for the sign code. So just our findings based on the criteria for a CUP. And a lot of the criteria weren't as applicable for a sign CUP just because it's related to a sign on a building. So criteria A, B, C, and F didn't really apply. However, criteria D is the compatibility with surrounding uses and structures. So the applicant's request for an excessive amount of sign square footage that is not supported by the code will conflict with the surrounding businesses' signs that are within code. So Ross is within the same building as Goodwill, and another tenant will make the sign look unproportionally large next to the other signs on the building front. So for example, Goodwill has already put in for a sign permit, and it is within code, so they can have up to 3 signs over a max of 150 square feet. So if you put that into perspective, Ross is requesting just for the main sign 351. Next, criteria E, that's the conformance with the general plan and city policies. So it is in conformance with the general plan. This is a commercial area. That's what the general plan designates it as. However, the request far exceeds the sign code by 217 square feet. The former Fry's was able to be successful while occupying the space with signs that met the sign code at the time. So that's kind of our reasoning for that. Criteria G, which is the unique nature of the property. There aren't profoundly any unique features or characteristics to the property that would greatly warrant approval of this request. Kind of like I said, the other tenant, Goodwill, they're right next door. They already applied for a sign permit, and they were all within code, and didn't have any problems with it. Then we have our recommended conditions. If you go with a reduced size amount for that one sign. So condition number 1 would be approval is given for 1 150 square foot main sign, 2 8 square foot wall plaques, and then the 1 7.2 square foot under canopy sign, all to be located on the Ross Dress for Less building, and then accordance with the drawings submitted with case CUP-2-18. Number 2, that the proposed signs be properly permitted and constructed as allowed in number 1 above and is conceptually depicted in the site plan submitted with the case file, including all the colors, textures, tones, architectural styling, heights, locations, and all of that. And then of course, number 3, the basic one we always include, that the Planning and Zoning Commission shall reserve the right to reconsider, overturn the CUP approval at a new public hearing for non-compliance. And then of course, you guys can add any other reasons, conditions that you deem appropriate. That is the end.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
What's the proportional difference suggested between what Goodwill has currently and what Ross?
I
The
don't know.
Goodwill, Madam Chair,
Yes.
Commissioner Kreidler, the Goodwill sign, which is actually a larger occupancy,
Yeah.
produced a sign permit that is compliant with code, so it's 150 square feet or less.
Another perspective, Ross is 18,000 square feet, Goodwill is 27,000.
Okay.
I don't know their exact building frontage, but they're within that 150,
Their
so.
square footages are indicated on the
they're-
site plan?
Let me go back, you probably.
Yeah, I looked at that. I just was curious as to what the differences were. And the other question I have is this a standard size for Ross at other stores or
That
not?
wasn't something that I looked into, and it was not indicated in their project narrative of justification that they gave, but that is something that you could ask the applicants.
Okay. Otherwise, it was fine.
On this drawing for the storefront, Yeah.
This one?
Am I reading this right? It shows that the overall frontage of Ross is 120 feet.
Yes, yes.
Do you know approximately, can you tell me what the frontage of the facade for Goodwill is?
I do not know that.
Is it twice the size?
No, ma'am.
Three times the
Madam
size?
Chair, I'm sorry. It would appear to be a comparable with the occupancy in the middle is about half or less than the occupancy of the width of either the Ross or the Goodwill. That's just the way they divided the old Fry's occupancy.
Could you repeat that again?
Repeat that?
Yeah,
The smallest suite is in the middle,
Yeah,
and then the Ross and Goodwill occupancies appear to be approximately the same in width, maybe not exactly the
Ross
same.
and Goodwill are approximately the same size.
According to the diagram that
frontage.
was submitted by the applicants.
So Goodwill is approximately, for the sake of argument, approximately 120 feet, just like Ross is, and they're asking for 150 foot or less sign, square footage, and Ross wants 350. Okay,
and Goodwill they're in compliance.
yes,
Yes, and their sign is up, right.
okay.
Good to know.
Any other questions?
No.
Anybody?
But Madam Chair, just so you know, they're asking for 62% more signage than the code.
Goodwill, yeah, then the code.
I just figured that out myself.
Pretty good, Peter.
Well, I was sitting here trying to figure out, because what does it say? It's 200 and,
217 more over.
Yeah, 217 more.
square feet more, yeah.
So they're asking for a lot more.
Okay.
Really not
Chair?
that
Yes.
big of a space.
So do the recommended conditions, the new signs, do they meet the current code or?
So the recommended conditions would put it over by 16 plus 7.2.
Why are we allowing them to go up?
So we just we just came up with compromise, allowing them to, instead of decreasing that main, we just gave them the 150 for the main sign, because the two square foot wall plaques, they're just like on the side, they're pedestrian wall plaques, so if you're walking along, you can tell it's Ross. And that under canopy sign isn't really included in like the sign code. Kind of, usually people just
Yes.
put them up,
I was
so
just going to say, if you can't see the sign from the road, it really doesn't count.
doesn't really,
So
Yeah.
even the 8 square foot 2 signs are not probably going to be seen from Old West Highway,
Right,
so.
and they're being put down there because people walking on the sidewalk won't see this, the 150 or larger squares of the sign that's seen for the road.
Correct.
correct,
for this
yeah.
purpose.
I'm just wondering if Goodwill was able, with the same frontage, to be within our code compliance, why shouldn't we do the same for Ross? And I'm
Well-
asking that question.
Well, again, that was for you to
I know, but
discuss and
I'm-
debate
I'm-
later, but our staff recommendation
Yeah,
is
I'm
to
asking
not,
that question. Why should we hold Ross to the same standards as other people who are going in the same area? It doesn't make sense for us to say, oh, okay, Ross, you can vary when we're holding your neighbor right down the street to the code, but we can give you a variance, and there's
Yeah.
no rhyme or reason
Well,
at this particular
Yeah,
juncture.
so-
Actually, the
Yeah,
answer to that is the findings of facts of the 7 criteria. So whoever makes the motion needs to make findings of fact to show if you wanted to approve a 350-foot sign, you would have to show in the findings of fact where what's the word I want to use? Where they deserve a larger
Right,
sign
right.
because of the criteria.
Well, I just wanted to, Madam Chair, I just wanted to at least bring that to the commission's attention, that, hey, if we're gonna be consistent here, let's be consistent,
Yep.
right?
Did we vote on Goodwill's sign? That, I don't remember.
You don't need
They
to-
haven't-
meet
No,
the code.
they,
It hasn't been submitted yet.
No, they, since you, when a building wants to put up a sign, they just have to submit a sign permit, and as long as it meets code,
Then it
The-
doesn't
then they
come for us to
re-grant them.
use.
We don't need, we don't need to discuss
Goodwill
it.
only wants a 100 square foot sign.
So-
That's all they'll
Yeah,
get.
so Ross
you know,
is
right?
here, yeah, Ross is here because they want more than what code
That's why
allows.
this is a CUP.
So I guess
Right.
you want to take into
Yeah.
account, if you talk about a strip mall such as this, there's usually a flagship store that the signage is bigger. Do you want it to be,
Well, that's what we're here. And
okay,
that's is why this is a conditional use permit for us to vote on or approve or deny.
That's correct.
So, any other discussion? Anyone else?
keep discussion?
Then I will open this up. Thank you very much.
Yes.
I'll open this is a public hearing, isn't it? Yeah. I'll open this up to the public. If anyone wishes to speak before this commission.
Do we get to hear from the applicant? Do we have
Pardon?
an applicant? Do we get to
Oh,
hear from
yeah, I'm sorry. I forgot the applicant. Duh.
So, the code says it can be 150 square feet total? Is that what it is?
Hello, my name is Sean Britson, and I am with Identity Sign Group, and I am representing Ross in this case. To answer your question, as far as proportionate, this is a standard letter set that Ross uses at majority of their stores. Proportionate-wise, it fits in the facade of their building. They design each building the same at each individual building that they own. So this is something that proportionally fits in the size of the facade that they build on these storefronts. In the case of like Goodwill and Ross Dress for Less, Goodwill, obviously, if you put them side by side at 150 square feet apiece, Goodwill is going to present much bigger because it is just Goodwill, whereas Ross Dress for Less has Ross and then Dress for Less. If we were to go in at code, Ross Dress for Less letters would be roughly, I believe, just under 4 feet in height for the signage on both Ross and Dress for Less. Usually Dress for Less is a little bit smaller, whereas like a Goodwill to utilize 150 square feet could go in at, like, say, probably a 5-foot letter. So it would present much bigger as Goodwill than Ross Dress for Less. So it's a proportionate thing. They are a flagship, so they do like to present bigger. In most cases with major tenants, usually major tenants are allocated more square footage just because they pull in the public a lot more. So somebody like a Subway in a Ross Dress for Less just doesn't, to me, seem like they should be, when somebody is 18,000 square feet and a store is 2,000, 3,000 square feet, why they should be allocated the same amount of square footage. The other reasoning for the requested increase in square footage is due to the visibility on Apache Trail. There are a lot of businesses that run along Apache Trail that block visibility to the shopping center, and unless you really pull into the shopping center, you really don't know what's in that shopping center to begin with. So they're trying to present to the public, as they're passing east and west on Apache Trail, to try and draw them into the shopping center, thus benefiting themselves and other tenants in the shopping center. So that's the request for the increased square footage is merely visibility. It is a standard size that they use at majority every store in the valley, and it's just a sign that's proportionately distributed on that facade that they build out, that they feel as if gives them the best visibility, I guess.
Sean, question for you.
Yeah.
Are there monument signs on the Apache Trail?
Yes, there is one. There's one sign on Apache Trail. There's one on Highway 88, and then there's another one on, I don't remember what that.
Phelps.
Yeah, Phelps. So there is one monument sign which I believe has a height of 10 feet or 12 feet, and the tenant panel that is displayed on there is only 14 inches tall. So, I mean, going by at 60 miles an hour, it really doesn't.
60?
Well, I don't know what the speed limit is, so I'm sorry, but.
I don't think
All
so.
the
Well,
PD
Are you,
PD on that.
So we have 3 monument signs surrounding that property?
Yes.
That'll have your name, okay, thank you.
okay. And are you stating emphatically that no other Ross in the state of Arizona has a smaller sign?
Actually, I think that most Ross actually have larger signs than what we're presenting here. We actually just did one in the city of Phoenix 2 months ago, and we were actually granted over 500 square feet of signage.
Okay.
Madam
Madam
Chair.
Chair, because I was Danielle, I thought she said that there was not it's not a standard size. Is that?
It is a standard size for the Ross Dress for Less nationwide. That is their standard size that they ship, that they like to put on a majority of their facades. If they can get larger, they do definitely go larger.
I guess I have a question for Larry or Rudy. So Sean was saying that this is the flagship. Would you consider Dress for Less to be the anchor store now for that store?
I guess you'd have to ask Goodwill if they think they're the anchor store. But I think they have 120 feet of frontage, linear frontage, so technically they're really only allowed 120 feet. So the code, the largest sign, I think it's up to a max of 150. So if you had 200 linear feet of frontage, the most you could have is 150. So at 120, we're going 30 feet over. So we don't have the linear footage of Goodwill, but if they met the code, whatever that is, if they had 150 feet, they can have 150 feet. If it's similar, if it's 120, when we say they met the code, they met the linear footage requirement. So this is slightly over what should be allowed at 120. So it is slightly.
Okay.
So again, I don't want to say who is or who isn't the.
Can you answer for me, just for our curiosity's sake, when Fry's was there, what was their main sign out on the front? What size was it? Do you know?
I don't have I think even their new sign, because they came in with a different sign package. I mean, it's not, again, I think there is some argument about signs being in scale with the building, or are you really trying to get a sign that you can see from Old West Highway? So there's a difference between, yes, it fits within the facade, but when you're driving by at 35 miles an hour, yes, you do have other buildings in the way, what used to be the gas station or a dentist office, those things obviously obscure signage. So again, but in reality, the new Fry's, I think we discovered they had more strict sign than our sign code, the new Fry's. And they wanted it to be strict because they wanted, I guess, a cleaner, neater sign package. So they were restricting what their tenants could have, and same thing on the shops.
Well, I
So-
think that's a little bit different, though, because they don't have all those buildings out in front of their new store.
Well, they will. There's 3 more pads coming there. So they will have some signs that are obscuring their
Yeah.
frontage.
Okay.
So,
Madam Chair.
Yes.
For Larry or Rudy, as far as calculating the sign area, on the picture, the depiction here, as far as Ross Dress for Less, it almost looked like that could, not looking at the signs on a regular basis, I don't know, but it almost looks like it could be separated into several different signs. If that's the case, how is the area actually figured? I mean, I read the code, but I'm not sure exactly of what all is inclusive of that.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Fryler, I believe we accepted the applicant's calculation of what their sign size was, and there are different ways to calculate sign area. You can literally draw little boxes around each individual letter, or you can draw one big box around the overall sign. I have seen some sign companies do technical calculus and, take out every little space they can to comply with the code. In this case, we simply took the applicant's measurement of what they estimated their sign size was. How they calculated it is a better question for the gentleman, but basically we accepted their numbers. And just one point of clarification, the code with regard to wall signs, which is what this is, it says 2 square feet per 1 lineal foot of tenant frontage up to a maximum of 150 square feet, and that 150 square foot can be divided over 3 signs. So back to Councilman Howard's question.
Which section is that, Rudy?
I'm looking at the table 11.1 sign standards. I'm not sure if we included that in your.
Oh, you're looking at the table, because I have the,
I'm looking at the actual sign code. Yes, okay, it's in your code here. The one that Danielle has marked with a star, wall signs. So for signs on the building itself, it's 2 for 1, 150 square foot maximum, and that maximum signage, whatever it is, whether it's less than 150 or 150, can be divided into as many as 3 signs. So as I understand this request, staff is recommending that the main sign be kept at 150, and we did not have a major issue with the two 8-square-foot signs. Once again, back to Commissioner Howard's point, if the commission prefers, they can recommend that the two 8-square-foot signs not be allowed, or that they can recommend that a total of 150, including the little wall plaques, be allowed. So in other words, the main Ross sign would be even smaller in order, if they really want to keep the two 8-square-foot plaques. I think that's what you were suggesting. Okay.
Okay.
And I don't disagree with Commissioner Howard as far as the consistency, but I'm just curious as to how that was all figured out. As I was looking through the code, I was like, okay, I get it, but I don't get it at the same time.
Yeah.
So maybe I can pose the question to you, how you came up with the total area?
We just, I believe we just went into the code, and I think, I don't know if it stipulates or not that you have to do one geometric shape around the entire sign, or not. I don't think I've seen anywhere that we could actually individually box Ross and Dress for Less and use that as two separate signs. If that's the case, I mean, I obviously want to go that route because it's going to shave almost 60 square feet off my sign, you know. But I was under the impression that it had to be one entire box around the entire sign. So that's why we calculated it that way. We were just trying to conform with what I believe what was in the code, but.
And that's why I asked the question that I did, because the way you explained it and the picture I was looking at, it looked like it was all encompassing.
Right.
If there's a way to shave it down.
If I could, you know, box out Ross and then Dress for Less, that's gonna, you know, what I have proposed, that's gonna take a little over 60 square feet of what I'm proposing. I mean, and that's just dead space in between, you know, the letters and the two lines of copy. So I mean, and did you say that code was 2 square feet per 1 linear foot?
Yes, so I was wrong on the other about the 120.
Okay, so I mean.
So it is 150 would
You know,
be-
see, and that's what hurts us as well, is we have 120 square feet, and if we're allowed 2 to 1, that should be 240 square feet of signage, but yet we're held to 150 square feet. So it's almost like we're being penalized for having a larger store facade. You know, whereas somebody like, you know, prime example, like you know, let's just use, for example, Dollar Tree is going into that middle section, and, you know, they have, you know, 50 square feet of front or 70 square feet of frontage, and they come in with a bigger sign than what Ross and Goodwill has. You know, so how does that justify? But yet they're still under the 150 square feet rule if they want to be.
Right.
So it's almost like we're being penalized for being the major tenant, and we're being held to 150 square feet.
And I understand, that's why I was asking for the difference in calculations and how that came about, because while I did read what was going on here, I wasn't visualizing it, which is why I asked you the explanation.
Right, and if they want to, you know, if it comes down to classifying Ross and Dress for Less as, you know, 1 sign and 2 signs, we'll drop the wall plaques, we'll drop the under canopy sign, and we'll go in as that being, you know, our 1 and 2 or 3 sign or whatever, and square foot it that way. I mean, we're not set in stone on having these wall plaques and these under canopies up. It's more about presenting on the store facade.
If
But
I could
what you're
answer
stating-
Mr. Kreidler, is that typically you do draw a box around because it says the extreme limits of the advertising message. So if it's Ross, Dress for Less, that's the advertising message. That's how you come up with the square footage.
Okay, all right.
And
thank
the
you.
other, again, if the mystery store in the middle is 70 feet, they could go to 140 because it is 2 for 1, but it's less than 150. So whatever if it's 50 feet, then they get 100 square feet.
Clarify for me. Let me see how to word this. Code says Ross can have a total, the large sign, then the 2 smaller signs and the under canopy sign would all be 150 square feet,
Max.
max. You're saying they can have, the city is giving them.
No, I had that
Quote,
wrong. So
unquote.
it's 120, so it's 2 times 120, which is 240, but the max is 150.
150, but they can put 150 on their large sign, and you're, in other words, giving them the other 2 signs and the under canopy sign for free.
Well, the under canopy, we weren't going to count
What I'm
because you
saying,
can't
you're not
see
even
it.
counting those 2.
So 16 square feet is not enough to get excited about,
So-
I guess is what we were saying.
So what you're saying is, even if he wanted to say, okay, I'll do away with those 2 signs and the under canopy sign just to get a larger sign, that still would, he'd still be limited to 150 square feet, even if he does away with the other 3 signs.
Correct. What he was saying
Right.
is if you can let me go to 250, I'll
Right.
drop the other sign.
I
So
understand,
it's-
I just
right,
wanted
okay.
to, okay. Anyone else? Robert? Michael?
My gosh,
Nothing?
this is a sign.
Huh?
This is a sign.
I understand.
I don't have it.
Yeah. Well, okay. Anything else that you would like to clarify? Okay, I'll open this up to the public then. Does anyone wish to speak about this conditional use permit?
Oh.
Mahmood Mayuddin, 2304 North Cortez Road, Apache Junction, Arizona. We have seen several times the big corporations coming over here with big attorneys, and they can get away whatever they want. And we see the small mom-pop place, and more codes and more things apply to them, and the other people's not, and then flexibility. It's putting a big sign over there. Doesn't matter is the Ross or Goodwill or whomever. If it's attract the people where they at, people can find them. They're gonna bring the tax dollars. Those tax dollars gonna come to the city. It's a benefit everybody. They're gonna have a more sale. They're gonna bring more tax dollar. Everybody be happy. These are all the codes we made for the small sign, middle, this one, small, all of them. We need to look into it and maybe have to work with the staff and commission work with it and make it happen, that stuff, city can thrive, more business can come, and spend the more money. Just like they say fries, how big the size is. We don't have any 8-mile radius fries. There's Ross, there's everywhere. If we have in our town Ross coming in dressed for less, it's more beneficial. Quality clothes, they bring the quality product. People's gonna go shopping instead of going to Mesa, they will shop in Apache Junction. Is a more tax dollar coming to the town. That's what we have to keep in mind, what's benefit the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Hearing and seeing none, I'll close the public portion and,
Madam Chair,
yes,
if I may,
yes.
in your motion, remember, this is the conditional use permit. So if you would turn to the page that Rudy included, it's really after, it's titled Apache Junction, Arizona Land Development Code, Section 1-16-12, Conditional Use Permits, Administration Use Permits, and Building Permits.
Do the findings.
Correct, but you have to read that section. Say, for example, you're going to approve this. Then you would read it, and then you would pick A through G, whichever item that matches up to your decision. But that needs to be in the record, because that's how the conditional use permits are done.
Right. I have a question for that.
Yeah.
Rudy has already said that only one of these criteria applies to Ross, is that correct?
Well, I don't know if Rudy said that, however, you are the commission, you get to decide whether these criteria apply.
Understand, okay.
So-
Well, he only listed D, E, and G,
Well,
but we need to address A through G.
if you, whoever makes the motion needs to basically say you want to approve it. So motion to approve, and the item will not be detrimental to the persons residing or working in the area, and then just state that, and then based on the following factors. And then you have to list those factors out, and then add additional language to those factors why you think they apply. If they don't apply, then don't list them.
Okay, okay,
So if we don't, so Joel, if one of those findings is not in any way applicable, I don't have to
Correct.
mention that and then say
Correct.
there's not.
to
Okay.
approval or deny.
Got it.
And if you want to see them, they're on pages 3 of 7 and 4 of 7 of the CUP.
Well, but the actual ordinance is on a page that's separate from that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I mean those 7 conditions,
Yes.
yeah. Okay, I'll call for a motion.
Were we gonna have any discussion first on it?
Well, I thought I
Oh, I
called
don't-
that,
oh.
and nobody said. Do you want to discuss?
I just would like, I'd be curious to get some feedback from the rest of the
Okay.
commissioners.
What specifically would you like to ask the rest of the commissioners to discuss? Specifics.
How, what is their thinking relative to that idea of holding firm to our code versus allowing for some latitude for a business that typically puts up a larger sign?
Madam Chair.
Yes.
I believe when we did the Fry's, the monument sign, that was way bigger than what the code called for, by a couple feet, if I remember
Yes,
correctly.
it was, and we approved it.
And then the Rose Haven, that sign over there off the trail, it was way bigger than what the code applied for that one too, well, being off the road,
That
of course,
is
so they can
correct.
see it.
That is correct.
So it's not uncommon to, I mean, Christ, this city and staff's been butchering codes forever, so I mean, we're talking about a sign, if it's their standard sign, what they normally use for their businesses. I roll up to a Ross all the time. I mean, I don't personally shop there, but no offense.
Really?
But I see them, and I don't look at it and say that's a huge sign. I think it just blends right in with the facade of the front of the buildings. Now, he does have a point. If the Dollar Tree or someone were to come in and be able to put his signs up, it would be larger because they're allowed the same amount of square footage, but they have a smaller storefront. So talk about disproportionately that would look. Now, I also believe that Ross would be more of a flagship store, the anchor store of that complex in Goodwill, and therefore should kind of stand alone in a sense. Don't, light fireworks off the roof every night or anything, but I mean, I think if you're talking about, 200 square feet, I mean, when it's distributed over, 15 letters, I don't think that's a huge difference to the eye when you're driving past it. And that's what I think about it.
Madam Chair, if I could clarify, I believe for the trailer park, mobile home park, they had asked, I think staff recommended, because the sign code eliminated RV parks in the sign code. So the interpretation was they could have an 8-foot sign. So we gave them a 12-foot sign. That's what I think happened there. So we gave them essentially what you could have as a commercial enterprise. For Fry's, I recall, the monument signs, I think they got 6 inches in height. It went from 12 feet to 12 feet 6 inches on those street signs. So I don't think it was, I think on the wall package for all the Fry's is actually less square footage than our code requires. That's what I mentioned earlier tonight, is that they actually thought less is better.
I kind of remember a few cinder blocks worth on the bottom of the
Funny,
monument.
because it seemed like a big deal with the monument sign
Right,
at that
we made
time.
a pretty big deal out of it. I don't think it would have gone that long for 6 inches. And of course, the smaller signage on the storefronts, that's Fry's saying, hey, this is our place. Anybody who's going to come move in here with us, they're going to see us first. I mean, that wasn't a matter of, we want it to look all nice and tidy. That was a matter of, this is us, and you're just here along for the ride. So as far as that goes, I mean, that 12.6 to 12 foot, I mean, this was a couple years ago. So, I mean, I really, it's hard to remember, but I thought I remembered it going, a few hours into the meeting over this, and we were talking about the cinder block base was to be a little higher. They were even talking that they would put shrubbery around it and lights, and so you really wouldn't even notice how different it was. If I'm wrong, if those of you who were here at the time, if you remember.
I don't remember any specifics. It's just too long ago. I remember we discussed it. It was one of the longest meetings on a sign.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think part of the issue was, it's a big player. It was a large company coming in, putting in a substantial building, and that, you know, are we really gonna make a big deal over a sign? Now, this is not quite to that degree, but this is a nationwide company. Do we wanna, you know, do we wanna make an issue of, you know, 200 square feet of sign?
Madam
That's what
Chair.
I'm just looking at that comment on that, if there's.
Madam Chair.
Oh, yes.
While I agree with Commissioner Howard as far as the consistency, Goodwill did have the opportunity to apply for a CUP with a larger sign, and the CUP is to apply for the exception to what is in code. So having that in mind, you know, I don't see a big problem with granting their request, since it is asking for the exception. And as it's already been stated, they're probably more the anchor than Goodwill is anyway. So maybe a little bit more deference can be shown towards them.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
in response to Commissioner Heck's question about how we feel about it, these different parameters are put out there for a reason. And I am in agreement with the city that we try to standardize what we're doing on these buildings without making one obscenely larger than the other, which takes away from the flow of what we want our city to look like as far as signage is concerned. That's my opinion on that.
Okay. Anybody else? Any other comments?
Madam Chair,
Yeah.
I think that as we go forward, let's remember, we talk about consistency, and I understand as a business person myself and understanding business, I understand what Ross's position is on this. At the same time, this commission, primary function with the signs is to be as consistent as we can. We haven't been consistent in the past, and all of a sudden now we're saying, well, maybe it's okay. So down the road, let's remember, we're having this discussion about, hey, is it okay to do this? So when I bring it up next time, when I say, are you being consistent? I don't want anybody to tell me, well, we're being consistent because it's this, and this. We have the rules in place. Let's at least try to follow them. And if we're not, let's say we're not, and let's move on. That's my opinion.
Michael, do you want to chime in?
I hear pros and cons on both sides. I'm kind of.
We'll throw out everything there and.
I'm thinking, I'm leaning a little more towards sticking with the code. If we need to make some changes and have some more variations, then we need to change our code. But I think we need something to follow a little bit. This was a lot more square footage than what we originally thought. I mean, like double what we originally had spec'd out for this space. So, I mean, we need to have some kind of guideline. I do remember the Fry signs, and it was about only 6 inches, less than a foot. That was a change.
Yeah.
It wasn't a double of what we need, but I do hear, I am torn. I do hear, I want business coming into Apache Junction. I do.
I do too.
So, my discussion ain't helping much.
Yeah, no.
You know what I'd like to see, and we don't have it here, is we have the applicant's drawing that shows us what the sign would look like. But what I'd like to see is that exact same drawing with what it would look like with just a 150 square foot sign. Because it's, you know, we don't, until we start discussing some of this, we don't think of these things always until you hear other people's points of view. Then all of a sudden it says, oh, wait a minute, what would it look like? I mean, in all reality, if that sign would, you know, for this size of a store facade, if it would be real little or something like that, then it might make a difference.
I don't know,
We
Sean
don't-
allowed the piece, looks like Sean's wanting to present.
Okay,
Piece of-
now, is this something that your what do you call them, draftsmen, whoever, designed based on city code?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
just interrupt. You're at the discussion level. You'll
Yeah.
have to reopen it to the public hearing if you're going to allow the
accept
applicant to
this?
speak again.
Okay,
And if you're if everybody wants to look at that, that should probably be up on
yeah,
the overhead.
I'll do that. Let's go that route. I'll open this, unless anybody has any objections, I'll open this back up
Do we need to vote on
to,
a reopening?
to the,
Do we need to vote on reopening the?
No, I can
The
just
chair
call
has
for-
the ability to do that.
I'll just reopen this up to the applicant, and if the applicant would like to give this to city staff, no, he said, no. If you'll give it to her, please. It's Danielle.
Danielle.
Not her, it's Danielle. As soon as I said that, I hope.
That's interesting.
Now, can you tell me that this picture that you have up there compared to this one, what's the size of the Rs in these two signs?
I believe the R on that is 72 inches tall, and the R on this is 48 inches tall.
So it's a
20.
definite difference
mean,
in size.
feet.
Just looking at this drawing, I mean, just take a look at the Dollar Tree next door that we have proposed. I mean, that, to me, looks bigger than the Ross Dress for Less, and that would be a smaller tenant than Ross.
I still wish I knew what Fry's was when it was there.
And as far as the Fry's goes, you know, I stopped in there and looked at those signs before I came here.
The one, when they were over there?
Well, I'm talking the new one, but
Yeah. That-
I can almost guarantee that those are probably 8 to 10-foot letters that are on that
Yeah.
building.
I just wish I knew what they were,
You're talking about the former Fry's.
the former Fry's. That's what I wish I knew what they were, because I can picture that because I can remember that. And since Goodwill doesn't have any signs up yet, I haven't had anything to look at.
They do, Madam Chair.
Huh?
They do have.
Oh, when did they put up it? Oh, well, that's right, they opened. I haven't been
I don't
by
think
there.
Dollar Tree has a sign up,
Okay.
but I know Goodwill does.
So are you saying it's definitely Dollar Tree?
We don't know.
Oh, okay,
Don't know.
I'm working with them, and they've
okay.
Thanks.
Okay, anyone else have any questions for the applicant on sign sizes between the two, what they'd like to have, and what the city says it should be? Okay, then I will close this portion and open it back up to the public. Does anyone in the public wish to make any comments or ask any questions? Okay, I'll close the public's portion and open it back here for any discussion.
I've got something to
Yes.
ask about it. So the formula, there's a formula, correct? The size of the building, and then a formula to determine what size your sign is. Like the new Fry's, for example. Do we know what size their sign is out front? I mean, obviously, it's a bigger building, so they'll have a bigger sign, but I'm just curious, is it in that mathematical equation?
Madam Chair, my recollection, and please understand, we're kind of trying to remember what we did a year or two ago. But basically, the Fry's Shopping Center came in with an overall sign package for the entire shopping center that included the signs that were going to go on the Fry's occupancy, how many signs were going to be on the Fry's occupancy, and how many size and how these sign sizes would be calculated for the other tenants, including the inline shops and the tenants on the individual pads. Plus, part of their sign package also included at least three monument signs and a couple of, maybe two gas canopy signs. I believe that all of their monument signs were 12 feet high, but the one on the corner of Idaho and Old West Highway was the bigger sign and the taller sign. Fry's, I think, actually ended up getting one main sign and then smaller signs that are, 6 or 7 that would say Starbucks and pharmacy and credit union, whatever. So, but it was part of the overall sign package for a much bigger 123,000 square feet, the Fry's occupancy alone. So I think the idea was is their sign package proposal was proportionate to the overall shopping center, not to one occupancy. And I'm not sure if I answered your question, Chairman.
You did, because basically we gave Fry's the flagship of that whole complex.
Right.
The signage as if they were the whole complex, as opposed to
Right.
individual.
But the way they calculated their sign area, in other words, our code says 2 for 1, the way they calculated their sign averages was actually less than what our code would allow. So there was a bit of a compromise on their part, because they could have followed our code and probably
But if you
gone a
take the
little
space
larger.
they're actually occupying, it's more than what our code would
Yeah.
allow. Okay, that's all I wanted to know.
Anyone else? Peter?
Yeah,
Talk about
Madam Chair, I guess
consistency.
where my dilemma, I guess, in this, I'm all for trying to maintain consistency, but yet we have created a tool by which an applicant can request a deviation from that. That's how this conditional use permit came into play. If we were saying, nope, we're holding the line, virtually everybody, this is it, if you don't like it, go somewhere else. But we don't do that. We've created a conditional use permit. So then it takes it away from being consistent to, let's look at the applicant, and if it is and I'm only looking strictly at the business element, if it is a business that is recognizable, has name brand, that kind of thing, should that applicant be given the opportunity for a more favorable consideration?
Expounding on what you just said, I've been thinking of this thought that, if we start having businesses all come to us with CUPs, because maybe what we've got in our ordinance isn't realistic to businesses. Maybe we need to, as a city, look at changing our ordinance, So, the thought's there, so, and as you said, it is a CUP, and that's the whole purpose of having a CUP.
Yeah.
If we weren't going to think outside our ordinance, we wouldn't have CUPs, so. Okay, that's my thought.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
I just wanted to ask Larry or Rudy, is the sign code being restructured still?
Yes, we brought that here a while back. We've been saddled with many other projects, but one of my recommendations is to eliminate the CUP because it can be arbitrary as to who gets what.
Yeah.
And so the best course of action is to be consistent. And the way to get, if you have some minor deviation, we can do that administratively. We can do 10% with reason in the code administratively. But to go 61% there's nothing wrong with changing the sign code and so everybody gets 200 or everybody gets 350 or 351. That's the fair thing to do as opposed to
Picking and choosing.
Make it
not picking and
conditional.
choosing, but what are the criteria then the criteria now is, well, you can apply for a CUP, and then you make your case, and then trying to find rational basis for approving it. So
does our
my recommendation going forward is to not allow the CUP, have the code as the code, get something that works for 99% of the people and businesses, and it should work, rather than have the deviations, but.
So without going into specifics, as far as changes with the code, is it going to be more enticing to business in the future? As
Well-
far as changing any type of dimensions or anything like that, or?
Well, by and large, the small businessmen, business person can't afford a 150 square foot sign. They can't afford digital reader board signs. They have to get signs that work. We have seen other types of signs for folks that are just getting started. They can't afford big signs. So a lot of smaller businesses, their sign size is limited to what they can afford and other forms of advertising. So we weren't going to change the 150. It seems like that was debated, and that wasn't that long ago. In 2014, people talked about the 150. So I wasn't making changes. Again, that would be up to you when we bring it back, but we weren't trying to make wholesale changes to that.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I don't think I'd use the word arbitrary, not respectfully. I would say it's, the CUP process allows changes based on findings.
Those
It's in the code. So it's not really arbitrary. As long as you pick and choose A through G. And if you do that and you have a rationale that goes with it, it's not arbitrary. So I just would disagree with the use of that term. Sorry,
Okay.
Mr. Kirch.
So whoever makes the motion needs to make very good argument about the 7 conditions. Anyone else? Anything else to discuss?
Do we,
Okay, yep.
I know we can't ask the applicant this, but I'll just ask commissioners, because, I mean, we've all been through shopping centers. Is there, you know, most of the time you'll go by, you'll have the Ross, you know, or the what's that other, the Marshalls, you know how they kind of stick together a lot of places. I mean, is this something that down the road, now we can get another inside of this complex that will kind of fit with Ross? I mean, is this something that we're gonna be able to grow off of, this business? Are we gonna be able to grow off of this business? Attract other businesses, because they tend to build around each other a lot of the times? I mean, this is something we gotta consider. I mean, are we gonna start the relationship right off the bat with consistencies and regulations? Right. So we wanna kind of keep this in mind if this is something that can turn out to be something in a more positive direction for the city.
Commissioner Schroeder, I agree with that. I do think that one of the things I recall having in my thinking when we were looking at the Fry's was, man, we would like to attract these businesses and would rather not start off with a adversarial, you know, we're gonna make you give in on this particular thing. It's a sign. Granted, it's saying, you know, we're still saying we're deviating from the code, but it's a sign, and if that's something that, in this case, this will work for Ross Dress for Less, and then maybe a Marshalls or, you know, some other large chain that comes into the city, that's a win-win, and
Yeah.
I guess you always talk about a win-win.
And one other thing about what was just mentioned about mom and pop's businesses and having smaller signs, well, you know, they can go to larger signs, but to draw businesses here, you know, you don't want to shoot yourself in the foot by limiting things like that, and then people say, I'm not going to go bother with all of that, you know. I mean, there's all kinds of ways to look at this. Yeah.
Madam Chair, I think Commissioner Schroeder's point is valid, but I don't think necessarily that the sign itself will be the determining factor. I think the determining factor is the type of business and the clientele that it brings. And that clientele is going to come if they know that the business is there. And a lot of businesses bring their clientele in by word of mouth rather than the sign per se. So to say Ross Dress for Less is the beginning, I think it can be the beginning. But I don't necessarily see the sign itself being the primary focal point for getting other business, because another business may say, hey, Ross Dress for Less moved into there. Let's look in that for our business. Maybe that would be good for us. And I don't think they will necessarily say, hey, that sign is not big enough for us. They've got a clientele coming in there, and those people are coming because the quality of their business, they thought it was good enough to be there, and they're there.
I had In response to that, Willie, I had something happen today, you know, whether you know or not, I'm a volunteer at the Chamber of Commerce on Tuesdays.
You know I know that.
And just today, I had a lady come in. What you're saying about people are coming there because word of mouth has told them there's a Ross. Well, this lady, word of mouth, she was told there's a, you know, she'd go down to the Chamber. And it was next to the Village Inn, you know, off the trail. And she said it took her 10 minutes to find it because
She didn't see the sign.
she couldn't see it because she didn't know where exactly to look.
Right.
That's where the signage definitely comes into play, because you might be told by somebody where something is, but that doesn't mean they can actually see it until they can find the sign.
Let me ask you this, Madam Chair. What was the size of the sign?
I don't know,
150 square feet.
150 square feet.
There you go.
I don't know exactly
I
what it
just-
is on the Chamber
okay,
building, but
I'm just making this point.
Yeah.
I understand your point, and I think it's a good point. But I don't necessarily believe at this juncture that the sign itself was the overall driving point to get that lady to that business. It was,
no, it wasn't.
I
Well,
know the business is there.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
Willie, I have a lot of admiration for you. You're a very smart man. I disagree with the sign theory, though.
That's
I mean,
okay.
if you were to say, look at Walmart, people build around Walmart because it
Right.
attracts people.
Right.
Look at Walmart Neighborhood Market. It's crickets. They turn CVS's into these stores. You barely even know they're there, but they're still a Walmart store. They still carry the Walmart prices, as in their grocery, I'm assuming.
I understand.
So, but the point is, when you talk about like the Walmart Neighborhood Market, people aren't building around that,
Right.
but they are building around Walmart. You know what I'm saying? They are building around that giant Walmart.
Yeah. Madam Chair, your point's well taken, but the operative there is Walmart.
Well-
Okay, it is a different entity, and if you look at the business model, Walmart failed on that smaller business model. They failed throughout the nation, okay? Because they thought if we put this up in this little complex, people will come. People didn't go. They were looking for the bigger Walmart sign. So I would agree
Yeah.
with you on that.
Yeah, they're looking for
let's
the bigger
get back
side.
to signs.
Hey, we're
We
talking
are.
about
We're
signs, aren't we,
talking
really?
about signs. We are talking about signs.
Everywhere there's signs.
And that sign from that business model failed.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
just one little side comment about Walmart. I think Walmart, their signs were also approved by conditional use permit for
Yeah.
their 300,000 square foot store.
yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And
It wa-
they
it
had
was- it was the
signs
metaphor,
that
the
were
difference
bigger
between a big
than
sign
any
and
of
a
the
small
signs we'd
sign.
No, I know
That's
that.
my point.
approved. A few years later, they came back and they reduced the size of all their signs.
Yeah,
When they did that little flower thing, they came back with all smaller signs.
yeah,
That's when,
But still far in excess of our code.
of our code, yeah.
yeah.
Okay, any other discussion? I think we've
Beating this
kicked
up.
that horse
We
Beating
beat
this
that
up.
to death.
all the way around the track. So I'm going to call for a motion.
All right. Madam Chair,
Yes,
I move that the Planning and Zoning Commission approve case CUP-2-18, a request by Simon CRE Lodgepole 3 LLC, represented by Identity Sign Group, requesting approval of a conditional use permit to allow for the placement of one 351 square foot wall sign, one 7.2 square foot under canopy sign, and two 8 square foot non-illuminated pedestrian wall plaques for tenant Ross Dress for Less at 185 West Apache Trail, Suite 1, Zone General Commercial by Plan Development, subject to the following findings and conditions. Finding D, compatibility with surrounding uses and structures. The commission recognizes that the request for the size of this wall sign exceeds the code and likely will exceed that, and certainly exceeds that of the, the neighboring or adjacent businesses. However, the in view of the fact that this is a nationwide company or chain, and it is the Commission's determination that we would like to be able to be consistent with their standard. Finding E, conformance with the general plan and city policies. The request for the size of the wall sign does exceed the code, and the general plan would suggest that it's not necessary. Again, the Commission is looking at creating a positive relationship with a new business in the city. And finding G, the unique nature of the property and use and/or development's physical characteristics. The Commission recognizes that Ross Dress for Less will be the anchor store for that strip, and as such, the Commission is willing to accept a nonconformity with the city code. So the conditions. Approval is given for one 351 square foot wall sign, and no other signs on the store.
Are you saying not to include the 2 8-foot
Not to
square?
include anything else, just the
Okay.
351 square foot sign. The proposed sign, condition number 2, the proposed sign be properly permitted and constructed as allowed in number 1 above, and is conceptually depicted in the site plan submitted with case file CUP-2-18 to include colors, textures, tones, architectural styling, heights, location, and elevation concepts, all in substantial compliance as presented in this CUP application. Condition number 3, the Planning and Zoning Commission shall reserve the right to reconsider or overturn the conditional use permit approval at a new public hearing for noncompliance with any condition prescribed as part of said CUP-2-18 permit approval.
And we don't need
And
number
that is
4.
that is all of the conditions.
Okay, we have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call vote, please, Rudy.
Commissioner McGraw,
No.
Commissioner Kreidler,
No.
Commissioner Frank,
Yes.
Chairwoman Nesser.
I want to see business here, so I'm going to say yes.
Commissioner Howard,
No.
Commissioner Schroeder,
Yes.
Vice Chair Heck.
Yes?
Vote is 4-3 in favor of the motion, so the motion passes, Madam Chair.
Okay, we have a new sign in town. We'll go on to old business. Do we have any old business? No? New business? Nothing new? Information and reports?
I don't think so.
Director's report?
I was just asked to bring your attention to this brochure
Oh, yeah.
that was left up on there.
Okay. Selection of meeting times, dates, location, and purpose. Would someone like to make a motion?
Yep. Madam Chair?
Yes.
I move that the Planning and Zoning Commission hold a regular meeting on July 10th, 2018 at 7 p.m. in the Apache Junction City Council Chambers located at 300 East Superstition Boulevard.
We have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call vote, please, Rudy.
Commissioner Frank,
Yes.
Chairwoman Nesser.
Yes.
Commissioner Howard,
Yes.
Commissioner Schroeder,
Yes.
Vice Chair Heck,
Yes?
Commissioner McGraw,
Yes.
Commissioner Kreidler.
Yes.
So moved, Madam Chair.
Okay, and unless I hear any objections, I will adjourn this meeting at 8:29. 8:30, well, that says 8:30, just